Hello and welcome to another Mr. Betabyte video, and here it is. We got there. An HF950, very similar to the American SL-HF750, NTSC of course. Main thing they share is they have the sled, this front drawer mechanism for loading the cassettes. Absolutely wonderful machines, totally crazy, and I absolutely love them. I've got one myself. I've got a low mileage, if you want to say, low hours units that I've had a few years now, that I use as my sort of main Betamax, and I love it. It's absolutely great. In fact, you've seen it because it has the white LED VU meters. So, I can't remember exactly what's wrong with this. I believe it's something to do possibly with the heads. And I'm really hoping that it just needs a service. Or there's something electronic wrong with it, because if the heads are gone, I don't have a head disc, and they are really getting very difficult to get hold of now. I possibly might have a good one somewhere. I'll have to have a dig around, but yeah, I doubt it. So, let's crack on. One thing that's really important with the HF950, if you are going to send it through the post, it really needs to be wrapped well. And obviously the most important thing is to use the transit screws. So what I always advise, and what's happened with this one being sent to me, is wrap it tight in cling film. It just really helps support the front of the sled, and just keeps it all nice and tight together, including the doors and everything as well. And I have to say, I've never had a problem with doing it this way. So 10 out of 10 for doing that. The only slight thing is always take the BNC adapters off the back. These obviously are a real pressure point in a box, and they can cause all sorts of problems, breaking even breaking the socket clean off. But invariably they'll crack the print as well, which is part of the reason why I always put a little bit of extra strength there these days. Not only for the carriage side of it, but also for the mechanical strength moving forward, because people are going to use those over the RF, and they weren't really ever designed to have plugs constantly plugged in and out, and yeah, so that's why I do that. But yeah, anyway, let's crack on. Okay, so I'm a bit confused. Got two of the three transit screws still in the back. This one right at the back is in. But I've got two random screws in the bottom. It doesn't matter. It's just not ideal, because you can put a bit extra or a bit too much pressure on the plastic rail for the sled. And you don't want to do that. If you crack that sled, then it's game over, really, isn't it? So, okay. We'll see. This machine was sent to me by a channel subscriber, Laszlo. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to repair this and share it with the rest of the community. It's really great. And as you can see, it's powered on, which is really good. Good start. Out of interest. We'll see about that. First impressions. The sled load and unload is very noisy. Now, that is not uncommon on these machines. One thing that can cause that is when the backup battery is leaked. The backup battery is basically here, and it sits above the loading, the sled motor, and it can cause problems. I've seen assemblies rusted underneath as a result of that leakage. from the battery, and yeah, I've also seen problems with the bush at the end, and all sorts of problems with it basically. So we'll have a look at that. But I suppose we ought to take the top off and then have a look at it. Try a tape. So top cover removed, and already some interesting bits and pieces. Love the arrow. That's always good because I always forget which way round this goes. But new drum in 1994, and there's also an OK on here. So I wonder if the linear audio bias transform has been changed, maybe, possibly. You know, in 94 they were probably still readily available, or relatively anyway. Looking at the upper drum, I don't know how well you can see that, but it is pretty shiny, so it's seen life, this machine, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at bad heads. But anyway, let's put a tape in, and okay, so that's loaded. And providing I've got this all plugged in right, which I'm sure I have, video out, I am getting no output. There's just nothing at all. I assume I've got that. Yeah, that's it. That's all there is. Okay. Now things get interesting. Given the heads are clean, and they were spotless, they were fine. But I still have no playback. But if I press pause, I get this. Now, this is showing like green down the right-hand side of the screen, and that indicates to me that I actually have. So if I slow the heads down more, you can see it gets worse. So the heads are actually running slightly slow. Now I've had this with another HF950, and I have to say I couldn't find what was causing the problem, and it is really weird. Even down to the point of changing the servo board. Now I do wonder if this is something to do with the signal board, because I believe from memory it takes one of the readings, or one of the, what am I trying to say? One of the signals from the signal board, i.e. the luminance chrominance board, video board, for servo, and that sort of makes sense. If I take it off pause, I get nothing. I can actually hear the heads hunting a little bit. If I forward cue, you can see just it's not happy. It's just running slow. So, and I've got no take counter either. Tape counter could be something to do with the heads, maybe the control head, but I think there's something more going on here. So I suppose we better investigate. So my feeling is probably adjusting the DFS will get this working somewhere near perfect. I really don't think that will be all it needs. It's very strange to have the DFS so far out for no apparent reason. Now the hinges are broken on the board, so whoops. So yeah, I'm just going to put the TT 3000 manual, just in case. And I'm just going to do this by eye, basically. So I'm going to turn it counterclockwise and get it so we've got somewhere near a good picture. Let's see what it's like. Yeah. So the heads are now hunting. So I'm just going to turn it back and just see if we can get a picture by turning this down. No. So my feeling is the signal that basically comes from the signal part of the deck that the Servo electronics uses is wrong. There's something not quite right there. So yeah, I need to check that. I do actually have another scope on the way, so that should be arriving in the next day or so. So I'll be using that as a first test. It's battery powered, one of these LCD ones. I don't know how good it will be, but it'll be quite fun to give that a test as well. So a few other things with these machines, just when I think about it. This is becoming really common now, and I think that's partly why the loading mechanism is noisy, although there's no signs of any corrosion. But obviously the battery has caused quite a bit of damage here to the, hopefully just the varnish. I don't think the print's bad, but I need to take that all back and just have a look, see what's going on. I mean, it's not ideal, is it? I think the later decks had the coin style battery. I've got the battery I cut out of it actually. So that type of battery. I think the earlier ones had just a single barrel type cell, and the legend's different on the board. Could be wrong, could be the other way around, but the battery type was changed during production. The other thing that's very noteworthy as well is you can see here this transformer has been replaced, and this transformer is the audio bias. Well, it's the bias transformer for the raise head, and if you record with one of these and you get no sound on the standard audio, the linear audio, but the hi-fi audio is fine, or the sound is very low, or you can hear the sound from the previous recording on it, then it'll be this transformer. One of the windings goes open circuit. It's driven quite hard, and I've had probably about 50% of the machines I see have this transformer bad, and at the moment I've not got a fix for it. I've got a few ideas. I have actually stripped a transformer down as well to try and put an overwinding on, but I've not actually tested that yet, so that'll be quite fun actually. Quite looking forward to doing that, seeing what happens. I have taken inductance readings off it, so I know roughly what they should read, but we'll see. I'm not holding out hope that I can fix the transformers, and I did have to soak it in isopropyl, keep topping it up for about 3 weeks before the top would come off the transformer. So yeah, that's all fun and games. Other than that, in the power supply, these power supplies are regarded as quite weak. They are pretty much just a 12 volts 4 amp power supply, thereabouts. I mean, I say 4 amp, I think it's a bit lower than that, but you know, if you replace them, you can replace these with CCTV type 12 volt power supplies at 4 amps. The only problem with that is they do ideally need to be grounded, you need to put an earth, so you need to replace the mains cable, which I've done on one machine, just because I didn't have any good power supplies at the time, original ones. Main problem with these is there are two bipolar capacitors, and they go bad. And when they go bad, it's just like the old C7s. When those big when those capacitors go bad across the switching transistors on the primary side of the first stage rather of these power supplies, it just blows the transistors. And they are, for half decent replacements, about 15 quid a piece. So it starts getting expensive. But the bipolar capacitors, I always check them before I put them in, because I've had a couple that have been bad and it'll make them squeal. I say bad, just not really in tolerance. So yeah, worth doing those. And I may well show, because I will replace them in here just as a matter of course. I may well show that as well. Other than that, I mean, there is underneath as well, which I'll show you. It appears that these are really horrific to work on because of the sled, but actually they're not. You can get the sled into the position you need, and you can take the plate off the bottom of this to get to the reel side of it, drop the reels, and you can get to the heads. You can even drop the drum quite easily. So they're really not that bad. The only thing that is really bad is, like I've said before, if the rail breaks on this side, this is a massive job. Even if you can get one. I mean, I've got one spare, but it's terrible. It's the whole machine out. You've got to take the whole of the sled out. That is a big job in itself. So getting this out, there is actually down here a little log, and if I just point to it with a screwdriver here, and basically when you pull this out, or when it goes to the furthest it can go, if you flick this back, it will continue to come out, and you can actually put it out a fair way with the loom connected. But if you need to take it right out, which you would do if you're going to replace this rail, yeah, I think I have got away with working on the rail with all these wires stretched, but it's really not nice. So yeah, you've got to take all of these off. Remember the routing of all the cables. So let's just give you a good shot there. And it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. I think pretty much everything unplugs from here, but I seem to remember there is one or two cables that don't. You have also got these. Yes, these are the ones that don't. So you can remove these from this end, but it's better, or what I've done, because we've got these here, is I've actually unplugged them from this end and pulled them out that way. So really, it's not pleasant. Yeah, so quite nice. It's obvious when this drum was changed that they've done alignment tests, check the RF and the heads, because the pin's bent. But that's good. It's good to know it's been properly aligned. So I've checked the servo circuitry with the scope. This is the new scope, incidentally, and I have found it actually to be very good. Despite the fact it's a fairly cheap one, for this sort of work, it seems fine. I've been really quite impressed. So yeah, I went through the servo circuitry. I've measured all of the relevant test points and compared that with the manual, and everything checked out okay. I could see on TP307 that the video signal that comes in here, you could see the noise, even though the picture was mute. You could actually see that it was rolling. So that led me to believe that probably there was something wrong with the control head signal, i.e. the pulses from the control head reading the tape. And that was backed up by the fact there was no counter movement at all. Then, when I was poking around, I was going to video the results of that. So I was going to just sort of run through the board to give you an idea of what everything should look like. And while I was prodding about and thinking, this isn't making a lot of sense, I knocked this capacitor. And this capacitor, just sort of tapping it, and I got a picture. And it is actually loose. It's actually completely loose, just floating about the one leg. So, yeah, that was a bit of an odd one. Now, I will say, it's not doing it now because I've messed about with it too much. But when it is making contact, I'm actually getting a picture. But I still think I've got a servo issue. So what I'm going to do is solder this back up, and then we'll do some more checks. The other thing that's quite concerning, and this is becoming a real common problem with these HF950s, are these black pads that they use, isolation pads. And I don't know whether you can see there, but it's rotting the leads to the components. And this just breaks off. This should be flexible, but it's just sort of breaking off, crumbling. And they're all doing that. I mean, you can see here that it's actually caused the top of this capacitor to start to rot, and you can sort of see the, I guess, aluminium sort of rot on the pad there. And yeah, so that is becoming a real problem. And I have seen components that, well, it actually isn't too bad, that have broken legs. I mean, this diode here, you can see, maybe just about see the leg there is starting to look a bit the worse for wear, just from being on that pad. Now, what I tend to do with HF950s, as a matter of course, is just go through them all and replace them with Scotch double-sided, insulated double-sided, so it has no conductivity at all. And I believe they're the modern equivalent of these sort of pads. But yes, certainly something to look out for, and they can cause all sorts of misery. I seem to remember there's a couple of diodes under here, actually. They're blue line diodes, which have got a whole pack of original ones, because they do rot, and the legs will just drop off right up close to the glass. So yeah, just be mindful of that if you're getting odd issues with an HF950, that you need to check those pads. So let's get this apart. I've disconnected and removed the plug from the variable power supply. I don't actually need to use a variable power supply once I get this far, just because I'm not going to vary the input voltage, but it's just a really handy switch. I can kill it quick with the switch. So, getting this board out, take out the V-lock and 2 screws off the back, take that out. This, give it a bit of a wiggle, it comes out. So this is just the reinforcement for the sockets there. And then I've got these screws here. And it's a while since I've done this, so see how well I can remember things, which at the moment is probably not not a good thing. So just bear in mind that you have got earthing. Rings there, just got the screw, that's fine. I'll pick that up in a minute. Where did that screw go? It's gone right the way through. I think it might have. Yeah, okay. Oh, this has been done before. There's a mark in the plastic there where this board has slipped up and gone through there. This machine has been worked on a lot, to be fair. And where's that capacitor? Wow, it's just broken. Basically, that's interesting as well. This chip has been replaced. There has been a lot of work on this. So this is what I was talking about with the blue ring diode. I'm going to lift this off. It's just so crusty. And usually when you lift these off, they break. Yeah, I mean this hasn't, but I'm sure it'll be fine. But you can just see what it does. Those pads, they're just terrible. They just eat away at everything. So yeah, definitely worth changing. Yeah, you can see here the other one isn't that wonderful, but I think that's sort of almost repair damage. I don't know quite how. Maybe a screwdriver was put under there to support it. I mean, why would you do that? But yeah, anyway, let's get that soldered. And so I've just done the same thing that the last person did that worked on this, which is fine. It's no worse. I will change that pad, but I'm not worried about it now. The diode is actually off the board, or off the pad, so if it is having an effect on anything, I will have to see what, because I don't think I've got a manual with the modifications in, so I don't know what the modifications are actually doing. Some people are really quite funny about the modifications that are done to Sony machines, but this predates the days of things like firmware updates. And I really have to say, a company making those sort of modifications for the general good of the end product is really very cool. There we go. Yes, so when you're putting these in, there's actually a little bit of metal that the board needs to sit on, and invariably when you're trying to put it back in, it doesn't quite go in quite as nicely as you'd like. Let's give that a bit of a clean around there. It's fairly dusty. So I think we're ready to give this a go. Yeah, so when you're putting this board in, there is actually a bit of metal here. You can see it where it's pushed in there as a support, and trying to get this back into place. You're trying to get it so the socket goes underneath this bit of metal, but the board sits above that bit of that pushed in section of the rear cover there. So yeah, just bear that in mind, so you can get it lined up nicely. So this is a bit interesting. Yes, that's soldered back in, but I've still got the same problem. And I'm wondering if the actual capacitor itself may be damaged. I mean, there could be a hairline in the print, I suppose. But I need to sort of check both, really. I mean, it's a 10 microfarad 16 volt capacitor. But if I just lift you up and just pulling on the capacitor, I think that's probably cracked print. I think the capacitor's actually going to be okay. But that capacitor's had a hard time mechanically. Just why? Why is that like that? Such a random place. I mean, it's just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, and the counter has advanced. So if I move the cap, and obviously we've still got tape speed problems, but it's counting. And it's just running too fast. So yeah, let's investigate. My last 10 microfarad 16 volt capacitor I have in stock. I do have other voltages, but well, let's go for the 16 volt one. Tiny. So let's crack on and get this removed. So that's out. Whoops. No difference in size. So that's the other thing. The capacitor that was in there was just really just jammed in there. Not quite the same attention to detail with getting the leads sort of nicely dressed, so they're not stressed right up to the bottom of the capacitor. You don't want to stress those. So as it stands, we still have quite a few issues with capstan speed. Lift that there, so it sits nicely. So we'll see what happens now. I've changed that cap. So we still have nothing. It's really weird because there has to be a break in the print, but I can't see one. I mean, it surely can't be just the mere fact that my finger's there, sort of adding some sort of capacitance. So if I earth my finger while I'm pressing on the side of the cap, it blanks. So that's with my finger just not earthed. If I earth it, it stops. So I wonder if the people that were working on this before had the same problem. And they must have wiggled that until they'd broken the print. That's fascinating. How interesting is that? And they've changed this chip, which is a servo control chip, essentially. I mean, there's more to it than that. Obviously, this chip is involved here. And these other chips are mainly logic switches type things. So I touch the top of the cap. It works. If I earth my hand, it stops. I say earth, ground, really, isn't it? Oh, I don't know. It's going to take a bit of investigation, isn't it? So, yeah. What I'll do is I'll have a look at this off camera and investigate what's going on, because it's going to be really boring watching me do that. And then I'll share the results, because this is fascinating, just how weird this machine is. I've been through all of that part of what I thought was a troublesome circuit, and it sort of dawned on me that when it is actually playing, the capstan is actually going at a much faster speed than it should be. And I think that's why that circuit, the voltages are all wrong, they're all lower. And when I put my finger on top of that capacitor, I'm actually dragging it down further, which seems to be enough to turn on both the counter and get a picture. You know, I'm getting control pulses basically. So yeah, as it stands, there aren't control pulses even, I think, even being used, because the capstan is going too fast. Control pulses don't even come into the equation when it comes to controlling the speed of the capstan, because it's just going too fast. Once it gets down to somewhere near its correct speed for playback, control pulses then become part of the equation, and those voltages will go up to like 2.7. They're actually about 1.6 at the moment, but more than likely I'll go through the circuit diagram anyway once I've worked out what's going on. But yeah, it has had a lot of work done on it, and somebody has pretty exhaustively gone through this and not been able to fix it. And for once, that slightly daunts me, because it's been a well looked after machine, and whoever's done the work on it is really knowledgeable on betas, and is little on me trying to sort of follow in their footsteps and then diagnose the fault as well. So the servo control chip has been changed. Love to know when that was done, but that hasn't cured the problem. So yeah, it's an interesting one. So next thing I think is to collect together all of the information I have on this, including the scope, what the scope measurements should be, and just go through them again. When I checked them originally, they looked okay, but did I check the capstan? Maybe I didn't check the actual capstan triggers. But anyway, I'll have a look at that and we'll take it from there. After quite a bit of slightly confusing fault-finding results, one thing that is evident is that the electronics is sending higher voltages than it should to the capstan to set its speed. So this transistor here should have about 1.6 volts on its output to drive the capstan, and it's got something like 2.85 volts, so it's running it fast. Now, I've followed it all through. It looks as if I'm getting voltage from the capstan for speed governance, and that's all correct. IC305, the output to that is actually a bit low. The inputs are fine, 4.5 volts, 2FG voltages, but the output is slightly low, and that output goes to this transistor here, which has this modification on, and this modification, it's rotting everything basically that's in contact with it. So I think what I'm going to have to do is, before I do anything else, and this could well be why I'm getting confusing test results, is get this removed, clean up the board, and just check everything's okay. So going to do that next. Actually, before I do clean that off, I was just looking again at this page in the manual, and you can see here on the FG lines back from the capstan motor, I should be getting a, what does it say? I can't see through the camera, can't see on the page. I should be getting a 0.14, I think that says. Yeah, peak-to-peak waveform on both of these. Oh, that's interesting as well. On both of these FG1 and FG2. And then pin one out, should be getting a 7.5 volt peak-to-peak waveform. So let's check that next. So measuring, let's get that so it doesn't dazzle the camera. So just measuring pin 1, nothing at all. Pin 3, I think that's right. Basically, it's the 2 pins that actually have the signal, the FG signal. I'm getting nothing at all, and also on pin 1 of the chip, do it without shorting it, nothing at all. So I'm not getting any FG signal. There's voltage there, but no signal, and that's definitely pointing to a dodgy sensor on the capstan. So I suppose we ought to have a look at that next. FG1, nothing at all. FG2, nothing at all. Output of IC305, nothing at all. What is it? I don't have voltage. Let's just do an auto set. Oh, I have. Right, so I do. 3.63. So that's the output of IC305, and I'm getting voltage peak to peak of 760 odd millivolts, frequency of 1.45 kilohertz. Let's just save that. That should be 7.5 volts peak to peak. So there is something not right there. I'm not getting any FG input either. Just nothing at all. So yeah, I think it's going to be the capstan motor that we need to check next. And yeah, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm just going to press play with this up on its side so we can just see what it's what it does actually look like. The ticking noise is interesting. Right, so the ticking noise is actually the real take-up real sensor, I think. Sensor? The take-up real table. So, okay, well that's fine. Probably get that service anyway. But yeah, that's definitely running fast. Yeah, so let's take this apart and take the power off. Now this does look more daunting than it actually is. So if I just undo this screw. Doing this while holding the camera freehand, which is not probably the best thing to do. But this then slides off. And it really is as simple as that. I mean, it's in some ways it's easier than a normal video recorder. So yeah, there's the capstan motor. Now the capstan motor, I'll have to drop it down from the top to get that out. I don't know whether I've got another one that I could just swap over. I mean, that would be a way of confirming if this is bad or not. But ideally, I'd like to get this one working anyway. So yeah, so what I think I'll do is I'll see if I've got one that we can just swap over and test, and then we'll see if we can get this one repaired if it is actually what's causing the problem. Okay, so after a lot of testing off camera, it looks like I've come to a bit of a full stop with this machine, insofar as I am not getting any signal from the capstan flywheel sensor, and it's just a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. I say that just because that's going to be almost impossible to find. The capstan motor is actually specific to the HF950, and although it's probably the same as the 700, which is used, which is the US version of this machine. But yeah, if I just press play, and there's just nothing. I don't get anything at all from the scope, and that's on FG1 and 2. So there's just nothing at all. One thing I haven't actually checked, which I probably should, is if there's voltage. Yeah, so there's voltage being supplied to it, 9 volts. Off the switch, 9 volt supply. So that's fine. Ground is grounded, that's all fine. You will notice that I have actually cleaned up the pad. I did start to, well, I was hoping that it might have been something to do with this, but as you saw in the previous section, I am getting a square wave here. It's just no amplitude, there's nothing there. I've just got a square wave of less than a volt, so yeah. And I've also cleaned up around here as well. It's amazing just how much it does. These pads do rot components. You can see there's rot. What's quite fun is where that other pad was. Look what it's done to the side of the crystal. It's actually gone green. Oh, I must do that one as well. You see the diode there is a bit sort of crusty, but it's just amazing just how they rot components, which is absolutely crazy, really. It's one thing that they go hard or start conducting, but when they actually give off fumes of rot components and component legs, it's not good. Anyway, that's it for this video. It's not a fix, it's a diagnosis, but no cigar. So yeah, if I can find a capstan motor, I may well have one. I'll have a look. I did actually scrap an HF950 for parts ages ago, and I think I have a good capstan motor there. But I would say, if you do happen to have a capstan motor for an HF950 or 700, please do let me know in the comments. That would be absolutely wonderful. This is actually for a viewer of the channel as well that I'm doing this repair for. So it would be really nice to get this machine up and running, because otherwise it's really good. It's had so much work done on it, and the heads are good, the upper drum's good. I changed the pinch roller. The pinch roller was actually creasing the tape, and you can see that it's got no run on at all. It should run on for ages, and it does actually distort as well quite a bit. So yeah, the bearings are well and truly shot in that. So I did put a new pinch roller on, hoping that would possibly increase the reliability of the deck enough to get a good control signal, which I've got. In fact, everything checks out fine except for the signal from the FG, from the capstan flywheel. So there you have it. No fix, but yeah, I will update on this machine in a future video. I've got a few more HF950 videos to come out in the next few weeks, months, whatever. And I'll update you in one of those, no doubt. But as ever, thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe. It'd be absolutely wonderful if you would. And see you in another video. Bye for now.